My name is Sophia, and I live in Austin, Texas. I grew up here, in a city where the sunsets are golden and the air is thick with music and opportunity. My life wasn't perfect, but I always believed I had the strength to make something of myself. I met David when I was 20, young and full of dreams, and for a while, I thought he was the answer to all my prayers. We fell in love quickly, or at least I thought we did. He was kind, charming, and everything I thought I wanted in a partner. But looking back now, I wonder if I was so eager to escape my small apartment and my struggling early 20s life that I ignored the red flags, especially the one waving from his mother, Karen. Karen hated me from the moment David brought me home to meet her. She had this way of looking at me, like I was something she had to scrape off her shoe. It didn't matter how polite I was, how much effort I put into getting her approval. She was cold, dismissive, and at times downright cruel. I remember one Thanksgiving just a month after David and I got married. I spent hours cooking a meal for the whole family, wanting so badly to impress her. When I proudly brought out the turkey, Karen leaned over to David and whispered, loud enough for me to hear, "Well, at least she can cook. She certainly isn't bringing anything else to the table." I was humiliated, but David brushed it off, saying, "That's just how Mom is. Don't take it personally." But it was personal. Everything she did was personal. She would criticize my clothes, mock my career aspirations, and tell David that I wasn't good enough for him. And when none of that worked to drive a wedge between us, she started lying. She told David that I was lazy, ungrateful, and worst of all, that I treated her like a maid. The day she made that accusation was the day my marriage began to crumble. I walked into the living room, overhearing her telling David, "Sophia thinks she's the queen of this house, making me do all the cleaning and cooking while she sits around." It was a complete lie, and she knew it. When I tried to defend myself, David didn't believe me. He just stood there, silent, while his mother glared at me with that smug satisfaction, knowing she'd finally gotten what she wanted. It wasn't long after that when David told me to leave. No discussion, no attempt to work things out, just, "You need to go." I left that house with nothing but a suitcase and a broken heart. And yet, as I walked away, I told myself this wasn't the end. It couldn't be. It's been 5 years since that day. 5 years since I walked out of David's house, leaving behind my old life, my broken marriage, and every ounce of love I thought I had for him. At first it was hard, so hard that I wasn't sure I could make it. I crashed on a friend's couch for a while, worked 2 jobs, and cried myself to sleep more nights than I can count. But little by little, I rebuilt myself. I went back to school, got my degree, and eventually landed a job in marketing at a firm here in Austin. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I made new friends, people who saw me for who I was and supported me in ways David never had. I even started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. My tiny apartment became my sanctuary, full of bright canvases, potted plants, and the kind of peace I never thought I'd have. Life was good. No, life was great. I was happy, independent, and for the first time, free from the weight of trying to prove myself to anyone. I hadn't spoken to David since the divorce. As far as I was concerned, that chapter of my life was closed. So when my phone rang one Friday evening and I saw David's name on the screen, it felt like the air had been knocked out of me. I almost didn't answer. Part of me wanted to just let it go to voicemail and pretend I hadn't seen it. But curiosity, or maybe some lingering masochistic instinct, got the better of me. I picked up. His voice was shaky, panicked even. "Sophia," he started. I didn't know who else to call. Hearing his voice again after all these years was jarring. For a moment, I couldn't respond. All I could manage was, "David, what's going on?" And then it all came pouring out. Karen had passed away. Cancer, he said. She'd been sick for years, apparently, but I had no idea. Not that I would have. We'd had no contact since the divorce. He told me how he'd spent everything on her treatments, trying to give her the best care he could. He sold his car, drained his savings, and took out loans just to keep her comfortable in her final days. And now, with her gone, he was left with nothing. No money, no job stable enough to cover his mounting bills, and rent past due. His voice cracked as he explained that he was at risk of losing the house. "I don't even have enough for groceries right now," he admitted, his desperation palpable. I sat there in stunned silence, gripping the phone like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. Part of me felt for him. Losing a parent is never easy, and I knew how much he loved his mother, no matter how toxic she had been. But another part of me, maybe a bigger part, felt cold, detached. What does this have to do with me? I wanted to ask. Sophia, he continued, I know I don't deserve your help after everything, but I'm begging you. I'm drowning here. I could hear the strain in his voice, the weight of everything he'd been carrying. And for a split second, I felt a pang of guilt. After all, this was someone I had once loved, someone I had promised to spend my life with. But then I remembered. I remembered the nights I spent crying, the way he had turned his back on me when I needed him most, and the years I spent clawing my way out of the hole he and his mother had thrown me into. David, I said slowly, choosing my words carefully, I'm really sorry for what you're going through. But I don't think I'm the person you should be calling for this. He didn't seem to hear me, or maybe he chose not to. Please, he said again, his voice breaking. I just need a little help to get back on my feet. Anything you can give, money, a place to stay, just until I figure things out. The audacity of it all hit me like a wave. This man, who had cast me out of his life without a second thought, was now asking me to save him. It was almost laughable. But instead of laughing, I felt my chest tighten with anger. I don't think you understand, I said, my voice firmer now. When you kicked me out, you made it clear that I wasn't part of your family. You didn't believe me when your mother lied about me. You chose her over me every single time. And now you want me to swoop in and fix everything. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then quietly, he said, I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, but I'm desperate, Sophia. Please. I closed my eyes, letting the weight of his words settle over me. Desperate or not, I couldn't ignore the fact that this was the same man who had let me walk away with nothing. The same man who hadn't once reached out in the years since, not to apologize, not to check in, nothing. And now, here he was asking me to save him from the consequences of his own choices. I took a deep breath and said, I'm sorry, David. I can't help you. He started to protest, but I cut him off. I've spent the last 5 years rebuilding my life. I worked hard to get where I am, and I won't let you drag me back into your chaos. You made your choices, and now you have to live with them. When I hung up the phone, my hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the rush of finally standing up for myself. For once, I wasn't the one bending, sacrificing, or trying to fix things. And it felt good, liberating even. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine, sat on my balcony, and watched the city lights flicker in the distance. For the first time in a long time, I felt completely at peace. When I hung up the phone that first night, I thought that was the end of it. I had said my piece, stood my ground, and drawn a line. But David didn't stop. The calls started coming more frequently, each one more desperate than the last. At first, I ignored them. Then I blocked his number. But somehow, he found other ways to get through, emails, mutual friends, even showing up at my office once. Sophia, I'm begging you, he pleaded, standing in the lobby of my building while I stood frozen, trying not to let my coworkers see the mess unfolding. You're the only person who can help me right now. I felt like I was being pulled in two directions. On one hand, I hated him for what he'd done to me, for how easily he'd discarded me when his mother poisoned his mind. On the other hand, I couldn't shake the guilt. The part of me that still remembered what it felt like to love him, to want to make him happy, whispered that maybe I should help. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the emails he'd sent. Each one was the same. Long, rambling, full of apologies that felt hollow and pleas for help that felt manipulative. He talked about how much he regretted what had happened, how he missed me, how he knew he didn't deserve my forgiveness, but hoped I could find it in my heart to help him. But the guilt wasn't the only thing I felt. There was also anger, a deep, simmering rage that had been building for years. How dare he come back into my life after everything? How dare he expect me to clean up his mess when he hadn't lifted a finger to help me during the hardest time of my life? I couldn't sleep that night, torn between the person I used to be and the person I had become. The old Sophia, the one who bent over backward to make everyone happy, whispered that helping him might bring me closure. But the new Sophia, the one who had clawed her way out of the pit he'd thrown her into, screamed, enough. The final straw came a week later when he showed up at my apartment. I opened the door to find him standing there, disheveled and tired, holding a box of old photos and mementos from our marriage. I thought these might remind you of what we had, he said, his voice soft and pitiful. I couldn't help it. I laughed. A sharp, bitter laugh that startled even me. You really think showing up here with some old junk is going to change anything? I said, crossing my arms. He looked taken aback, like he hadn't expected me to respond that way. Sophia, I'm trying to show you that I'm serious. I've changed. Change? I said, my voice rising. You haven't changed, David. You're still the same person who threw me out when I needed you. You're still trying to manipulate me into fixing your life because you can't face the consequences of your own choices. And you think I'm the selfish one. He flinched at that, but I wasn't done. Years of pent-up anger and frustration came pouring out. Do you even realize what you're asking of me? Do you know how hard I worked to get where I am, to build a life without you and your toxic mother? You had your chance, David, and you blew it. Now you want me to feel guilty because you're finally facing the fallout of your own actions. Well, I don't. Not anymore. His face twisted with something between anger and disbelief. You've become so cold, Sophia, so selfish. That made me laugh again, a real full-bodied laugh this time. Selfish? No, David. Selfish was expecting me to sacrifice everything for you and your mother while you gave me nothing in return. Selfish was throwing me out of our home without a second thought. Standing up for myself isn't selfish, it's survival. For a moment, he just stood there, staring at me like he didn't recognize the woman in front of him. And maybe he didn't. Maybe the Sophia he thought he knew would have caved, would have felt sorry for him and opened her wallet or her home or her heart. But that Sophia was gone. I think you should leave, I said finally, my voice steady. He opened his mouth to argue but seemed to think better of it. Without another word, he turned and walked away, the box of memories still in his hands. When I closed the door, I felt lighter than I had in years. For the first time, I had stood up for myself completely, without guilt, without second-guessing, without apologizing. And it felt incredible. After David walked out of my life for the second time, I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't known before. It wasn't just about him, it was about me. About finally choosing myself over the people who had drained me for so long. That weekend, I hosted a small dinner at my apartment with friends who had become my family. We laughed, shared stories, and toasted to new beginnings. My walls were adorned with my paintings, bright, messy bursts of color that felt like a reflection of the life I'd built. As I sat there, surrounded by warmth and love, I realized how far I'd come. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. I had a career I loved, people who lifted me up, and a peace that came from knowing I had stood my ground. I didn't need David or Karen or anyone else who tried to dim my light. I was enough, just as I was. And for the first time in years, I felt truly, completely whole.